Hi again, and now I'll talk about a checkmate that I wanted to analyze more deeply, which is the back rank checkmate. And the idea of this checkmate is to attack a king that cannot escape because the escape is blocked by its own pieces, normally its own pawns. So let's start with this very basic position. Here, if it was white to play, white would just give a checkmate with the move rook to e8 because we see that these pawns block the escape of the king. We're talking a back rank checkmate because we're talking about the 8th rank in this case, if it's black, or the 1st rank if we analyze the position from white side. Now let's imagine that it is black to play, so here black should prevent this idea. Black doesn't have a checkmate in 1, for example black cannot play rook to d1, because also here white has a back rank problem, but there's no quick checkmate, so here black has to think about stopping that checkmate. And the main ways to do that is either to defend the back rank. In this case, we cannot bring the rook to the 8th rank, but we could play a move like king to f8, and here we stop this idea of rook to e8. This is an idea to defend. Another idea, since the pawns are annoying black's king, is to give an escape square for the king. So here black could move the h or the g pawn. For example, after the move h6, now the king can escape to h7 after rook to e8. This idea is also called to give Luft, which is a German word for air. And in this particular position we can even play another idea, which is the move rook to e6 to stop the rook from playing rook to e8. Now this idea of the king being blocked by its own pieces is normally happening with pawns, but as we see in this position it can happen with pawns and a knight. So here after the move rook to e8 we get this very nice checkmate. But if we take a look at this very similar position but with the rook on a3 instead of e3, here the move rook to a8 is not a checkmate, but it's still a very strong move. So as we'll see later, we can combine sometimes this idea of a checkmate threat with an idea to capture material. So here the only move for black to stop the checkmate is the move knight to d8, which wouldn't be possible if the rook was on e8 because that was a checkmate. And here we can capture the knight, and in the end white is a pawn up. So black can continue here with the move king to f7. Black sacrifice the knight, but at least avoided checkmate. As usual, when we're talking about checkmate, we can sacrifice anything if we can give checkmate. Here in this position, black just played knight to b6, which attacks the rook, and here it would be natural to move the rook or to exchange rooks, but white used this idea of a back rank checkmate with a very simple queen to f8. And we also have another tactic here, which is called the X-ray, which is a situation on which a piece, the rook on e8, defends one of its own pieces through another piece, in this case through an enemy rook. And in fact here already black resigned because after taking the queen, which is the only legal move, we get a background checkmate. Now, like any checkmate or any tactic, it can get more and more complicated. Here we have top players playing, and black missed this idea. Here white played the aggressive knight to d7, we attack the rook, and here black played the natural rook f to d8, which as we'll see is losing material. Just want to mention here that black could have defended, but it was a bit tricky after the move rook f to e8, and here white can try the very interesting rook to e5 because this knight is pinned, but here black has a very strong counter-attacking move, queen to b4, because the knight is hanging but we attack the queen. So here after white moves the queen, we are in time to move the knight, or if white exchanges queen, then we capture with the knight and black is holding the position. Instead here black played rook f to d8, which looks natural, is active, planning to take on d7, but here white, as usual following this principle of trying to find forcing aggressive moves, played the very strong queen to e5. And here white uses this idea of a back rank checkmate in order to combine it with another tactic to gain material, because now we have this very strong pin. This knight cannot move because white would just capture the queen, so the only logical idea would be to capture the knight and defend it, because otherwise, let's say h6, we just capture, and even if black tries to move the queen, let's say to a4, it is true that this knight is pinned here, but white can defend it. For example, rook to d4, then bring the other rook. This knight is very well defended and white will be a piece up. Black is a very strong player, resigned here, but in any case the continuation could have been rook takes d7, and then we get this background checkmate after white sacrifices the queen. So background checkmates are very common. They normally occur when we have a king that is castled, as we see in this case. They can normally be prevented by defending the rank or by giving an escape square for the king, but they can also be used to combine it with other tactics.